So what have you done today to make you feel proud?
Hello everyone, welcome to Friday's Assembly. Now I'd really like to start with an update on Simon and Sally Swallow and their nest. Now if you remember, we had 5 eggs in the nest and we saw those last week on Friday. There was nothing happening. Well, on Saturday some of the eggs started to hatch. So first of all, around about lunchtime on Saturday, 2 of the eggs hatched, and there were 2 little chicks in there. Now you can see they're not very feathery, they just look a bit pink and strange. You can just make out their eyes there. And they were just flopping about a little bit, and Sally kept going off to get food and coming back to see them. And then the next day there were 5 chicks in the nest, but we're not really sure when the other 3 were born. So my sister-in-law thinks they might have come in the night. We're not quite sure if that happens. But anyway, on Sunday there were 5. So you can see Sally here clearing out the nest just to keep it nice and tidy and healthy. Now that it's full of 5 little chicks, she's clearing out the eggshell to keep it tidy. And you can see them all just flopping about. Can you count 5 little beaks there? And when they want to be fed, what they do is they just put their head right back and just open their beak as wide as they can. And you can see that enormous hole. That's to make it really easy and really clear. It's like a target for the parent birds to come and pop some food in. So at this point, they're just floppy little bodies and then a really big mouth. And then you can just see the eyes. Those 2 kind of blackish bulges on either side of their head. So it's been really exciting watching these pictures. We'll keep looking to see how they grow over the next few weeks. I would think the nest is going to get very cosy as they get bigger and bigger. Okay. Now the book I'd like to read to you this week is called Granny Sarah and the Last Red Kite. Now I knew Miss Fulford didn't have very many, if any, red kite stories, and I came across this one, so I thought this would be especially nice if you're a red kite. And it also ties in well because it's about birds and about a nest and some eggs. It's a little bit longer than last week's story, I think, but it's a really nice one. Okay, so Granny Sarah and the Last Red Kite by Malachy Doyle, illustrated by Petra Brown. Granny Sarah's cottage, high in the Welsh hills, is Lowrie's favourite place in all the world. Her favourite sight in all the world is the red kite, soaring over the fields and valleys. She loves its long forked tail, the way it glides with wings spread wide to the wind, and its high, lonely call. And Lowrie's favourite story in all the world by far is the one about how Granny Sarah saved the last red kite in Wales. Tell me again, Granny, Lowrie asks every time she comes to stay. Tell me about the kites. Granny Sarah makes a pot of tea, puts another log on the fire and pulls her chair up close. Looks cosy. Long ago, she begins, there were red kites all over Britain. In those days, they didn't just live in the forests and mountains, they were everywhere. It said they were so tame that they would take bread and butter from the hands of children, and the king passed a law saying that no one was to hurt them, because they helped to keep the streets of London clean. So they maybe picked up the food scraps and things that were on the streets. So they helped by tidying up. So what happened, Granny? Lowrie asks, sucking on a ginger biscuit. She knows the story back to front, but she always wants to hear it again. Why did they nearly disappear? Oh, says Granny, scowling, some people didn't like them at all. Farmers thought they killed too many chickens, and gamekeepers said they took their young birds. They wanted to get rid of them, and once the kites became rare, that's when there weren't many left, people began to steal their eggs. They were driven out of the towns and villages, hunted deep into the hills, and 100 years ago, the last red kites in England and Scotland were gone. Wow. Now, we often see red kites above our school, don't we? So it's hard to imagine. But there were still some here in Wales, weren't there, Granny? Lowry helps herself to another biscuit. Yes, but by the time I was your age, there were hardly any left. Not that we noticed up here on the farm, for there'd always been kites round about. But one day, a man came and told us that the two nesting in our old oak tree were the last pair in the whole country. My dad was shocked and said he'd do all he could to look after them. There he is promising to take care of the red kites. From then on, it was my job to keep watch. If a stranger came near, I'd run to fetch Dad. Usually it turned out to be a bird watcher or a traveller who'd lost his way. But if Dad had any doubts, he'd tell the man to clear off and not come back. Can you see there? There's a bird watcher with some binoculars. And what about the day your dad went off to market? This is the scary bit, the bit Lowry likes most of all. What happened then, Gran? Ah, yes, says the old woman, her voice dropping low. One fine spring morning, when Dad had taken some sheep down to Tregaron, I heard a yelling in the wood. I looked up, saw birds scattering from the trees, and ran. What's going on? I couldn't see anyone, but then I spotted a rope dangling from a high branch of the biggest oak tree. I heard a rustling above me and saw someone scrambling up towards the nest. He was trying to steal the eggs. Can you see him? But why was he shouting, Gran? Asked Lowry, her eyes wide. Was he trying to frighten the birds? They were frightening him more like. They were swooping all around, trying to stop him reaching the nest. And he was screaming at them to keep off. They're big birds, aren't they? Wow. Leave them alone, I yelled at the top of my voice. And he was so surprised that he must have lost his grip, what with the kites attacking him from above and me roaring at him from below. Help, he cried, I'm falling. And he started crashing down through the branches. What did you do, Gran? Weren't you afraid he'd land on top of you? I took hold of the rope and swung it out under him as he fell, crying, grab it, grab the rope. And he did. Can you see her at the bottom there? Swinging the rope so he can catch onto it. You saved him, Gran. You saved his life. Well, he still clattered to the ground, but he managed to catch hold of the rope and it slowed him down all right. Without it, he'd have broken a bone or two, I can tell you that, Cariad. What did you say to him, Gran? Did you give him a row? I certainly did. What do you think you're doing? I shouted. You're lucky you didn't break your neck. She looks very cross, doesn't she? I know, he said, groaning, as he picked himself up off the ground. I nearly felt sorry for him then. He was no more than a boy, really. A man said he'd give me £5 an egg. My dad's out of work and we need the money. Well, it isn't right, I yelled at him. There'll be no kites left if people like that have their way. Now clear off before my dad catches you. Clear off and don't come back. Fair enough, said the boy, nodding. There must be better ways of making money. Oh, and thanks, girl, he added with a shy little smile. Thanks for holding out the rope. He hobbled off down the track and we never saw him again. What did my great-granddad say when he came back, Granny? At first, I don't think he really believed me, she replies. Not till I took him down to the woods and showed him the rope. The first thing he did was cut it down. And then he was angry with me for trying to stop a thief on my own, and proud of me, all at the same time. So no one got her or stole her eggs, Granny says, coming towards the end of her story. And the last red kite in Wales had 2 chicks. She came back to the same nest each year from then on, knowing it was safe. Soon the young she'd hatched were making their own nests, having their own chicks and spreading further and further across the hills and forests. There we go. So that by now, Lowry, Granny leans over to grab the last ginger biscuit before her granddaughter gobbles the lot. There might be as many as 1,000 red kites in Wales. But do nasty people still try to get them and steal their eggs, Gran? I'm afraid so, Cariad. It happens every year, but more and more of us protect them and watch out for them. The people of Wales are proud of their red kites and proud to have helped them survive. There's Gran getting the last biscuit. And the proudest of all is Lowry, for without Granny Sarah, there would be no more red kites. Yes, without Granny Sarah and her father, the children of Wales could never again stand on a hillside and feel their spirits soar as they watch those magnificent birds flying free above the treetops, twisting and gliding in the swirling of the wind. Now there's some information at the back here. I'll just tell you a little bit about it. Okay, so it does say just over 100 years ago they'd completely gone in England and Scotland and almost gone in Wales. And as it says in the story, it's believed that at one time there was just one breeding female bird in Wales. Thanks to the efforts of a few landowners and organisations such as the RSPB, that's the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, and the Welsh Kite Trust, there are now 500 pairs of red kites in Wales. And there are about 500 across England and Scotland where the birds have recently been reintroduced. So I remember a while ago when there first were some red kites brought back to Harewood House. And now we see them all the time. I see them flying over my garden, and we often see them, don't we, when we're in the playground at school. It says here, red kites nest high in trees. They pair for life, so that means they team up and then they stick together. The same 2 red kites stick together and have eggs each year. And normally they have 2 or 3 chicks each spring. Because they've been protected so successfully, they were voted Bird of the Century in 1999. And they were made into the National Bird of Wales in 2000. Wow. So there we go. Granny Sarah and the Last Red Kite by Malachy Doyle. I really like the way that Granny Sarah is so brave in that story. And although she can't do a lot, she's only small, isn't she? She's really passionate about protecting those beautiful birds, and she really wants to look after the wildlife that she has on her farm. So we can all do a little bit about that, can't we? We can all think about the wildlife even in our own gardens, think about how we can take care of it and what we can do to protect it, just like Granny Sarah. If everybody does a little bit, we can all team up, can't we? And really work to look after our wildlife. Right, I'm going to put proud on again, and I know lots of you have been sending in your proud work, and it makes the teachers feel really proud to see all the things you've been busy doing at home. So you could maybe have a think back about some proud work, even if you've not sent some in. Think of some work that you've done that you're really proud of this week. Well done, everyone. We're so proud of you. You're working so hard and having so much fun as well. And sometimes it's a bit tricky to keep cheerful, isn't it, when life's a bit different? But we're really proud of the way you're all just getting on with it and enjoying your learning. So well done. Give yourselves a little pat on the back. Okay, I'll see you next week. Bye.